Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our virtual Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies seminar. As a reminder, all lines will be muted. The presentation will also be recorded and provided via a follow-up email. We want to cover some quick rules of engagement as it relates to the virtual seminar today. The presentation is being recorded. A link to the recording will be provided in a follow-up email. Please use the meeting chat feature to ask questions or make comments at any time, and they will be addressed at the end. During the Q&A portion of the seminar, you may raise your hand and unmute when your name is called. Most importantly, please bear with us if any technical issues are experienced. Also, a link to a survey will be provided at the end within the chat area so that you may give us your feedback regarding today's presentation. Now it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenter, Dr. Michelle Eckroth with Samaritan Heartspring Wellness Center. She will be talking with you today about building resilience with whole foods and lifestyle interventions. And she has a passion for this because she experienced a personal health crisis in 2015, which led to the discovery of integrative medicine and functional medicine. So I am now going to hand this over to Dr. Eckroth, and here is a little bit of background about her.
So I want to thank you all for joining us today. We're in our virtual world. Usually I like to do this in person, but with COVID, this is the best we're doing, and we're doing it very well. So I want to thank you all for coming. There's a lot of information, so you will have access to this recording, so you can review it at your leisure, write notes, etc. So please don't feel like you have to memorize it. I do talk at a pretty quick clip at times, so I'll try to remember to slow down, but we'll have time for questions at the end, and again, you'll have access to information to review, and I also have some references, some of my favorite books, and some of my favorite cookbooks that you can look at too, so you can implement some of these ideas for yourself, so you can build your own personal resilience. So we are now going to start the presentation, so let me see what button I get to pick here, because it went elsewhere. So we're going to bring this up here. And I want to make sure that everyone can see this. We're going to move forward to where we are. Oops, went too fast. So the one question is, why should we even talk about resilience? And resilience is our ability to respond to adverse things and to continue moving forward and growing. And we have a lot of reasons to wanting to have resilience, both mentally and physically. Just stress. Modern life is one of the most stressful events that we've known in mankind. And so you can look at many of these things, families, work, etc. But stress is a big player in our modern life. And we've all personally experienced adverse events. In just the year 2020, look what's happened to us. We have a significant political discord going on in our country right now. We've had our organ fires with the hazardous air that we've never had historically in my lifetime. And we also have riots going up in Portland with shops being broken. And then good old COVID-19 has really changed our society. So it's not just other traumatic things like physical or sexual abuse, etc. Every one of us in this room has had significant adverse events. And so we need to learn, how can we build resilience so we can weather these things? Definitions. So the American Psychological Association defines it as the process of adapting well in the face of adversity. And that adversity comes in all forms. It's trauma, tragedy, threats, or even significant sources of stress. Dr. George has a nice definition. He says resilience is a stable trajectory of healthy functioning. Dr. Rachel describes resilience as an reintegration of self that includes a conscious effort to move forward in an insightful, integrated, positive manner as a result of lessons learned from an adverse experience. Dr. Ann says resilience refers to the capacity for a dynamic system to adapt successfully to disturbances that threaten the viability, the function, develop that system. And she uses the word system to not only refer to the human body system, but also our system as our community, our system as our state, our system as our nation. And then Dr. Catherine refers to resistance as a process to harness resources to sustain our well-being. So resilience and your genes. They have actually discovered genes. So these are pictures of chromosomes, and these are highly packed DNA in a very compact way to fit in our nucleus. And when you stretch these out, here's the double DNA helix in which our genes are encoded. So they've discovered some genes that people can inherit that tend to affect our resilience to events. But again, your genes are not your destiny. You're not doomed to have lots of anxiety because you have a particular gene. It has to do with your interaction between your genetic predisposition and your exposome. So this slide is fuzzy, so I don't expect to be able to read this at all. But I want you to focus on this little human being here, okay? So our genes are the material that we inherited from mom and dad. And then what happens to us in our entire life, and my life story and what I'm exposed to is called my exposome. So it is the intimate interaction between my genes and my exposome that determines how I express my state of well-being or how I state my resilience. So for instance, social. Was I raised in a family in which there was an attack of mother and father? Was I raised in a blended family? Was there a death of one of my parents when I was growing up? Ecosystems. Was I raised in the country or was I raised in the city? Physical, what things I've been exposed to chemicals. We're producing 8,000 chemicals per year that we dump into our environment, and very few of those are even tested to see how they affect us as humans. And then lifestyle, these are things I get to make choices on. So do I drink? Do I smoke? Do I exercise? Do I eat processed foods or I eat whole plant food? So your choices on a daily basis impact what genes are turned on or off in each cell of your body. So we can build resilience with better dietary choices and improved lifestyle. And we are going to focus mainly on whole foods because each one of these could be an hour talk in themselves. So we're going to do whole foods primarily, but then I'll touch just on exercise, restorative sleep, stress reduction, healthy relationship. But like I said, each one of those could be an hour presentation themselves. So we're going to focus on whole foods. Now, macronutrients, these are the big things. This is the protein, carbohydrates, and fats. Proteins are made of little amino acids, and they're strung along a string here like beads, but because they each have unique charges, when it's all complete, it actually folds up into a three-dimensional structure. And this is actually an electronic microscope picture of that three-dimensional structure. And so the number of proteins that we can build is almost infinite. So we have 20 amino acids, and there isn't enough matter in the universe to have one example of each kind of protein molecule we can make if they were just 60 amino acids long. So there's some protein molecules that are 1,000 amino acids long. So it's fascinating what variety our body can produce. Plant protein, these are some examples of them. And then there's animal protein. So if you eat animal protein, the very best are to be fish. And when we talk about fish, we want them to be the little fish. So we use the acronym SMASH that stands for sardines, and I'm forgetting what the last S is, but there's sardines, mackerels, that's it, salmon and herring. And the idea is you want to eat fish that you can fit in the palm of your hand because they're at the lower chain, so they're going to have less mercury. If you eat big fish like tuna, he eats all the little and then the medium-sized fish, and then he gets all the mercury in those bodies he's been eating. So, and also notice the no farm fed fish, because these fish are fed genetically modified feed. You want them to be wild caught. If you're eating animals like beef and chicken, you want them certified that they're 100% organic, pasture raised, and they're out in the field. You want happy meat, okay? You don't want meat that's raised conventionally because they're fed, again, genetically modified grains. They're pumped up with antibiotics and all sorts of things. In terms of eggs, you again want those chickens out there scratching around, getting the worms and getting the sunlight, happy chickens, not in cages, and that they're pasture raised and also certified humane or animal welfare approved. So this is part of an anti-inflammatory diet, but primarily whole plant food is what you want the majority. Now there's differences between plant and animal proteins. And so we're going to start with the plant-based. One is plants are a primary source of all animals that cannot make their energy. That's what heterotrophic means. These are you and me and cows and everybody else. The only things that can make their own energy, of course, are like algae in the sea from the sunlight, and plants. They take the energy directly from the sunlight. Soy, quinoa, and hemp are actually considered complete proteins, but most proteins in plants are incomplete, which means they don't have all the essential amino acids. But if you look across the entire spectrum of whole plant food, all the amino acids are present, and we no longer are teaching that you have to eat them in combination in the same meal. If you have a nice rich variety, you'll get all your amino acids. So for instance, beans have a lot of essential amino acids, but there's some they're missing. Well, whole grains like rice have the missing ones that the beans don't. So if you eat a bean and rice burrito, you have a complete protein meal. But again, we don't have to eat the same meal. We can eat them out throughout the day, and we get the amino acids as we need. Most proteins don't require really high pH to digest. They're rich in branched amino acids. They're easier to digest, and they have more arginine. This is one of the amino acids, and glycine. And these two amino acids have been associated with preventing the clogging of our arteries, the hardening of our arteries, which is a good thing. Animal-based proteins, they have the advantage of being a complete protein. So you're eating the muscle of that animal. So you're eating the middleman. Okay, he ate the plant first, so you're eating the muscle. So yes, you get all the amino acids in place. The problem is it takes a much lower pH to digest the proteins that are found in animal protein. And so, for instance, albumin, which is found in eggs, it takes a pH of 1.5, so that's very low. So the pH range goes from 0 to 14, 7 is the middle, and our bloodstream's at 7. So you can see 1.5 is really low. So that means you're having to produce a lot of acid. It takes a longer time to digest the animal proteins, and because of the high acid need, I think there's more heartburn and ulcers. And in addition, there's certain amino acids, the cysteine, the methionine, the phenylalanine, and tyrosine. These are in greater amounts in animal protein, and they can be changed into different products. And some of those are cisterol and phenyl. And these two products are associated with skin and colon cancer. And we know that red meat increases the incidence of colon cancer. So smart carbs. Smart carbs, carbohydrates in general have gotten a bad rap lately. So I'm talking about smart carbs. These are complex carbohydrates. This is actually the preferred energy source for our body. Whole foods have it. And in addition to the complex carbohydrates, they're packed with those nutrients and those vitamins and minerals that we need. And also, whole foods, they contain fiber, which influences the rate that we empty our colon. We need to empty the trash daily. And the fiber feeds our microbiome, which are 100,000 friends that live in our large colon. The next thing is the muscle and the brain, the glucose is the choice of fuel for that. So what are smart carbs? They are things that are, again, fruits, vegetables. These are whole foods, beans, seeds, nuts, whole grains. We need to choose those. We need a balance between protein, fats, and carbohydrate. Processed carbohydrates are not our friends. Those are the carbohydrates I want you to avoid. So the microbiome, gut health and you, this is the title of a talk I gave a year ago, and it is a very detailed talk about what is our microbiome and how does our gut health relate to our overall physical mental health. I'm not going to talk about that obviously today, but I just remind you that what we eat feeds our microbiome. So what we eat determines who lives in our microbiome and how they can help us. And if we choose processed foods and highly sugared things, then we are not promoting a healthy microbiome, and so it can't help us. So we need to protect our microbiome. We need to be microbial wildlife managers. Way we can protect our microbiome, again, is to avoid GMOs, pesticides, and antibiotics. The antibiotics in the foods then actually kill the bacteria in our gut. If possible, eat 100% organic produce. If we can't do that because of cost, because a lot of us are limited funds, okay, then you can use the environmental working groups list of the clean 15, dirty dozen, clean 15. And then again, we want to not eat conventionally raised animals because these are given antibiotics. So when you eat that meat, that antibiotic is in that meat, and it then kills off your healthy microbiome. So this is a beautiful list that I gave you the website, environmentalworkinggroup.org. They do the work for us. Every year they test all the vegetables and produce, and they make a list. The Dirty Dozen is the list of produce that has the highest amount of pesticides. So for instance, I read an article a couple years ago about this poor, beautiful little strawberry here. When he's conventionally grown, they found there were 49 different pesticides / chemicals on him. So you always, if you can, buy these organically, okay? The clean 15, though, if you cannot buy everything organic, these are things that you can buy conventionally with not fear of getting a lot of toxins because they have the least amount of pesticides. So that's a great resource, and they update it every year. Now, healthy fats, that's our third macro molecule that we want to talk about. Fats, again, got bad rap in the 1980s and 90s. And again, there's good fat and there's healthy fat. And I'm going to be focusing on the healthy fat, okay? So the healthy fats, again, we want to eat our fats whole, as whole foods. With fat, I'm going to use the example of wheat. So in the grain, there's the endosperm and the germ, and there's fat stored there for that potential growing baby plant in the future. And so that fat, if it's exposed to oxygen, will become oxidized or rancid and is no good. So there's actually molecules called antioxidants beautifully packaged in the endosperm with that fat, so it does not become rancid or gets, old. It's ready and fresh. Now, when we take our vegetables and we extract, so we take the olive and we extract the olive oil, it is now being removed from the antioxidants, and now that fats can be then oxidized if it's exposed to oxygen and light. And so as soon as the olive gets then harvested, the olive oil, put in a bottle, that's why they put it in a dark colored bottle, it starts that process of becoming rancid. And so would much rather have you saute your vegetables in vegetable broth versus oil. So again, eating your avocados, your nuts, these are where we get our healthy fats. Then we have micronutrients. These are the things that are tiny. They're essential, 13 vitamins. We cannot make these. We need to get these from our foods. Minerals, there's 15 essentials. Again, we cannot make these. We get this food, we get them from our plants, our whole plant food in particular, because meat does not have any vitamins or minerals unless you're eating organ meats. So whole food really is your medicine and is a great way to build up your resilience. Whole foods do not have barcodes on them, so that's a way you can differentiate. It's nutrient dense, so it has all those minerals and vitamins in it. You want to eat the food as closely to the way it comes off the plant, out of the ground, off the tree, less processed, okay? Now, I don't care if you chop it up and cook it, that's cool. And again, we want to try to be 100% organic, but if you can't, then follow the Environmental Working Group's recommendations. It's designed beautifully to meet our needs. There's a proper ratio, like we said, the balance between the carbohydrates, protein, healthy fats, phytochemicals or chemicals that plants make for us. It's not found in meat or processed foods. We've even learned about microRNA, and this is little plant RNA. It's a genetic material that is in the apple that you chew, and then it has a little zip code, a protein molecule attached to it. So that little plant RNA then zips into where exactly it needs to go to your body, and then that plant RNA actually talks to your DNA and turns on and off certain genes. And that's totally cool. We didn't know that before. Now, when I take that same apple, chop them up, put some bunch of sugar, cinnamon, put them in a pastry thing, bake them, put them in a box, put them on a McDonald's shelf, and then you come through the fast food and you order the McDonald's apple pie, you're not getting that microRNA benefit at all. So that's why we want to eat whole plant food. And then the fats are, like I said, are surrounded by antioxidants, and the fibers feed our healthy microbiome. So again, these are some of those plant chemicals we're talking about. So that's why I encourage people to eat the color of the rainbow every day. So one of each color plant, it could be a vegetable or a fruit, but the beauty is that each color represents different phytochemicals that then help our body do different things. And Dr. Furman has this cool plate. A lot of the plates I see I don't agree with. So vegetables, he recommended 30 to 60% to be vegetables. He's recommending 10 to 40% to be beans, 10 to 40% to be fruits, 10 to 40% seeds / nuts, and 20% of whole grains. And if you notice this little tiny red sliver and this yellow, so I blew this up. He recommends that we avoid cheese, sweets, processed foods, white rice, white flour, factory farmed animal products, especially red meat, and to limit less than 10% to be the naturally raised or wild animal products, okay, poultry, eggs, fish, dairy, oil, and white potatoes. So processed food equals fake food, and it truly is a poison, okay? So I've come to discovery that either our food is our medicine or it's a poison. And so the reason why processed foods are not good for us is because they're very addictive with the fat sugar combo. They can take something gross and make it taste delicious, so we eat it. This is part of a science of the food industry because they want you to buy their product. It's calorie dense. So it has a lot of energy in it, but diddly squat in terms of nutrients, so no vitamins and minerals. It feeds your non-beneficial bacteria and the yeast in your microbiome, and all that beautiful fiber that helps move your stool and help feed your microbiome and to allow your sugars to be released slowly from your whole plant food, that fiber has been removed. So refined flours and sugars lead to elevated blood sugars that suppress the immune system. And we don't want that when we're building resilience. So just to give you an idea of where we're gone in history, in 1700, average American was consuming 4 pounds of sugar in 1 year. And this only goes to 2009, so I'm sure it's higher today. But they were eating 180 pounds of sugar in just 2009. And this is not going to work, so I'm just going to give you a little description of why high sugar is not a good thing for your immune system. So we have white blood cells. They're floating around in this bloodstream up here at the top. And then down below here, you can see some bacteria. And so what happens when you're normal, your white blood cells, these bacteria release chemicals that give an alert. The white blood cells come floating by and they realize there's a problem downstairs. So they stick to these cells and they come rolling here and then they squeeze through this opening here. And here's the bacteria and he comes and he eats those bacteria. Okay. When we have high glucose in our sugar, in our bloodstream, then it sends like roadblocks. So this white blood cell cannot adhere, it cannot attach to these cells, it cannot roll, so it can't get in. And the few that can get in, it's like the sugar puts a big barrier here in front of the bacteria so the white blood cell can't get in there to gobble it up. So sugar is not our friend. So the goal is no more than 5 teaspoons of sugar, of added sugar. So read your labels. They put sugar in lots of things. So if you're in the grocery store and you see a tomato sauce and it says 10 grams of added sugar, well, look at another brand and say, look at this one. It has 0 grams of sugar in it. Maybe I'll try that. So, and save your sugar use for those special occasions, you know, that cupcake for your grandchild's birthday. So you get to make a decision what's on your fork. Next, we can build resilience with exercise. Ideally, we should be doing about 30 minutes of some vigorous exercise 5 times a week. So we like to do 3 types of exercises. We want cardiovascular, we want some muscle strength, flexibility, then balance and agility, balance, particularly as we get older. So you could simply just walk 10,000 steps per day. Walking is a wonderful cardiovascular. Muscle strength, we can do that with a little resistance work. You don't even have to have fancy weights. You can just take a can, you know, a heavy soup can, you know, and just, you know, do some bicep, you know, with that. I like flexibility. I use Pilates myself. Yoga is another one, and Pilates, Tai Chi, and yoga are other wonderful things for balance and agility. So it has a positive, exercise has a positive effect on our physical well-being, as well as including improving our mood and improving our self-esteem. It also affects neurobiological factors that are part of our resilience. So it builds more of BNF, which is brain-derived growth factor, and that helps build our resilience. Sedentary lifestyle is the new smoking, okay? So sedentary lifestyle, we now know, causes an increase of 10% mortality irregardless of the cause. So here's some options that you can do to help break up our kind of modern sedentary lifestyle. So standing instead of sitting on the bus, or walking to your work if you have that option, or take a walk during your lunch break, or every 30 minutes when you're working at a desk, especially in COVID, we're all in front of the screen, get up, stretch, just, you know, 2 minutes, go get a drink of water, you know, take phone calls outside while you're walking, and look at how much you're sitting watching TV. And if you have an option and you're capable of taking the stairs, take that versus the elevator. We do a lot of disjustice to our sleep. Our society is very sleep deprived, and so resilience is built by restorative sleep. And so optimal time to clean our brain is between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So if you're a night owl and not going to bed until 1 a.m., you're gypping your body of its cleansing ability of the brain. We have now discovered the brain has lymphatic system, which is part of the cleansing, draining of the junk and the fluid and leftovers for the day. So during the day, while you're thinking, talking, walking, your brain's working, your brain's so slowly is swollen over time, and it gets to the point where it blocks those drainage pipes, okay? So when we go to sleep, the brain relaxes, and it starts decreasing the sizes of those neurons, so now those drainage systems can function and get rid of the toxins. Ideally, we should sleep in a pitch black bedroom at about 67 degrees Fahrenheit. They recommend no screen time 3 hours prior to lights out, because the light from the screen is activating our brain and telling our brain it's daytime. Instead, it's blocking our ability to make melatonin, and melatonin is the sleep hormone that we need to produce to sleep. I find 3 hours not feasible for me, so I do at least a minimum of an hour, not to eat 3 hours before bedtime. And then look in your bedroom to make sure there's not any blue or green light. Again, blue-green light waves go into our retina and suppress our production of melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. Red lights are okay. And you know you have the ideal bedtime when you can wake up spontaneously without an alarm clock at the time you want to be up. Stress, again, is a major player in affecting our resilience, and so we want to decrease that. So there's breath work you can do. This is just some instructions of how to do this. I'm not going to go over it today in detail because of time constraints. HeartMath has a wonderful apparatus to help you, train you to find balance between your two systems, your parasympathetic and sympathetic system. Sympathetic system is what we use. Let's say a cougar jumps out at me. I'm going to either fight that sucker, I'm going to run as hard as I can. That's the sympathetic. It has its place. But in high stress, that system is always turned on, and we need to learn how to access our parasympathetic. Parasympathetic helps to digest our food. It makes us relaxed. There's forest bathing. That's what the Japanese call it when they go out in nature. So connect nature, mindfulness, balance in your life, having some margin, not having so cram-packed that you don't have a moment to spare, and then prayer or whatever your spiritual practice you like to do is very helpful for breaking down stress. Resilience building with relationships. So again, we've learned that family, social community is very important for building resilience. So a strong positive bond between a primary caregiver and a child. There's developmental, environmental factors. So again, having a positive family functioning, peer relationships, connection with supportive adults, so social support with teachers and peers. Culturally relevant resources are available. They have found that early episodes of uncontrollable stress repeatedly leads to a learned helplessness. Now, you can overcome that later with therapy, but we want a little bit of stress because there's what's called stress inoculation. So when a child or young adult's challenged with an appropriate level of stress and they conquer that task, they do it, and that makes them very, very good in themselves. And later in life, when they hit more stressful moments, they actually are more resilient than if they hadn't had some stress inoculation. Individually, your self-discipline, your own cognitive ability. If we feel we have more control over the stress, it has less effect on us. And Viktor Frankl was a gentleman who survived a concentration camp, and he used the idea of meaning in life. As long as he found meaning in his life, he was to survive whatever the Nazis threw at him. He focused on what he had, not what he lost. And he said, they can never take me away. And that he pulled through the concentration camp. Mindfulness, that means living in the moment, focusing on what you're doing now, looking at a beautiful colors in your salad you just made. Smell the fragrance off that salad and just enjoy the crunch. So being in the moment. Humor. Cousins, of course, had a very serious disease, and he conquered it with humor. And I want to encourage you guys, those that have had traumatic experiences in your past lives, not past lives as in multiple lives, but in your earlier lives, in your childhood or your adolescence or even early adulthood, where you were either abused, traumatized, or a victim of a crime, we can change those neural circuits, okay, and they can be modified so that you can become resilient. And in spirituality, so I call that the vertical relationship. Not everyone has a belief in a God or higher power. That do, they have the religious beliefs. Those that don't have that particular worldview, then you have your own spiritual practices that you can use. And most everyone has some sort of moral compass or internal belief system that guides their values and ethics. And it helps to have a shared group that supports you in those beliefs and things. These are some of my book recommendations that you can look at. They're easy to read and they have lots of references in them. And it's hard sometimes to transition from the standard American diet of processed foods, predominantly meat, to trying to get more of the beautiful rainbow of colors and whole plant foods. So these are some cookbooks I found useful. And now I'm going to stop the presentation and just allow Erin to give you a little instructions on how we do the Q&A, and then I'll open up to questions.
If anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and raise your hand. There should be a hand symbol. It's probably up to the top right portion of your screen, but it's just a little hand. If you click on that, I will call on your name. When I call your name, go ahead and unmute yourself, and then when you're done, remute yourself. And if you prefer not to speak, you can always use the chat box. We'll be checking the chat box as well. So we'll open it up to questions at this time.
Okay, I see a hand on Anita.
Annette?
Annette, pardon me. So go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
I see. So that was really information packed. Thank you so much. Also curious about the show you said you did last year on the microbiome. Is that available somewhere in the Samaritan Archives on their website?
That's a good question for Erin. Don't, Erin, I still have my original slide for that, but I don't think it was recorded.
Correct.
But
Yeah, that.
And one thing we might consider, I can talk to Erin about this. I'm more than happy to bring
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's just from Mary. Where will we be able to find the slides? I may have missed this when I was trying to get in. Yes.
yes.
And everyone else, we will be emailing you a follow-up email that will contain a recording of today's presentation. So you'll be able to go back and watch it as many times as you want.
Yeah, and you can pause at each slide because I try to put the information on the slide, and you'll be hearing my voice too. And then if anyone wants more information or has questions for me, you can contact me through Heartsprings Wellness Center. And I'm here to serve anyone that wants to see me between ages of 0 and 30. So if you have other family members that have interest or want to go down a health journey to help build their resilience, etc., I'm available for that too.
Do we have any more questions at this time? Going once.
Well, I want to thank you very much for all that joined us today. It was a pleasure, and it was cool to see your faces. Until the next time.
Thank you again for joining us today. Your feedback is valued. I'm going to put a link for you to click on to take a survey to let us know how we did today. And then again, watch for that follow-up email. We'll include a link to the recording. And if anybody's interested in our next Healthy Minds, Healthy Bodies, here's some information about it. We appreciate you joining us, and have a great day. Thank you.